What's up, gamers? DreamcastGuy here, talking today about a topic you've all been begging me to dig into, which is virtual reality. Is it really dead? This is a really complicated issue because if you ask the VR community, virtual reality is still just alive and well, but if you're really somebody out here just trying to investigate this, it seems like it's quickly drying up. There are three really big problems with virtual reality that I feel like are holding it back. This is still an experience that is so super fresh and new and, quite frankly, awesome. So many games like this can be super amazing. In fact, when I'm in VR playing with this Vive, it almost seems like I'm in this world. If I'm driving down a racetrack, it's hard to tell my brain that it isn't actually happening. So, why are people not getting into this more? I feel like, first and foremost, it's expensive. It is very, very hard to get a good setup for VR at this point. Even if you're going really cheap and you're trying to go the PSVR route, you're still buying a $300 console and a $300 headset if you're getting both on sale. $600 just to play the worst version of virtual reality. If you're looking for a real top-of-the-line experience, the games that are so realistic that it can actually confuse you where the world ends and you begin, you're going to be looking to spend closer to $1,400, somewhere about $1,000 for your computer to make sure it can put out the best graphics at the best frame rate, and another $300 or $400 for the headset itself. This is a huge, huge investment for anybody. I mean, that is a big amount of money, even if you are a pretty well-off person. What's extra confusing about this, though, is if you actually look at some of the data, what kind of intrigues me is the fact that people are actually really hungry for VR. They just aren't able to get into it. They can't actually afford the beginning price. If you look at any of the actual survey results, almost everybody says, and I quote, "I would get VR if it was free." Now, the reason I feel like that's so important is because it's showing that people really want to try this stuff out, but quite frankly, their bank account won't let them get into it. I also think that there's a little bit of an issue with the fact that so many of these games are, well, really bare bones. There's not really a giant breakout experience yet. Now, I'm going to use the example of the Nintendo Switch for a second. When this first came out, it didn't really have a ton of games. It was a really thin launch. But specifically, Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild was used as a way to show you why this platform was worth investing in. It showed you that games are going to be big, beautiful, and full of stuff to do. Almost everybody who got a Nintendo Switch bought a copy of Zelda because it was a representation and a promise of what it would be. Now, when I'm playing the HTC Vive, there's nothing really like that. Unfortunately, right now, the best stuff for VR is console games that have been ported. Stuff like Doom, VFR, or Fallout. That's stuff that's already been tried, trued, and tested on consoles and on PC and later ported to VR. There's nothing yet that really says, hey, this is worth the price of admission. This is worth hundreds of hours and tons of your time to try and get into. Now, that alone is pretty bad, but I feel like there's the added problem of the fact that studios themselves don't quite seem like they're prepared to jump onto the VR train. If you look on Steam, which is the main place you buy VR games, almost everything is early access. That shows that there just hasn't been enough time and there hasn't been enough real interest to spend the amount of cash needed to build a giant digital world with VR goggles. This is a big issue. Even when I talk to people who are absolutely in love with virtual reality, they will admit that the best games need a lot of work. They'll tell me about sword fighting simulators where you can almost feel the weight of the blade, and times where you're actually sneaking through a forest as a ninja. And while those are fantastic, they're extremely thin. There's usually only 2 or 3 things you can do, or some of these games are basically just interactive movies. It's because this technology is still extremely cutting edge. Nobody has really had the years to figure out every single aspect to it. That's something that they don't really have to face when it comes to standard development. Everybody up to this point has still gotten used to the idea of developing games to have a controller, a simple screen like this, and some really easy to understand gameplay. the interfaces of dealing with 3D environments and bigger battles through these goggles is a lot more expensive and difficult to learn, so therefore the games kind of suffer from it. The final part of this, and I feel like something that's really hurting it the most, is, well, it's still just not really advanced. When it comes to virtual reality, these goggles are still really new. These were only really invented in an actual sense in the last couple of years. Think about this. This is an HTC Vive. It is an amazing piece of hardware, but playing it requires that you have a lot of cables hanging out of the back of your head. When I have this on and I'm in the world, I need to clear out a lot of space, and I need to be careful when I'm actually trying to play it. If I don't have a special harness or have this going down the back of my shirt or something, I'm going to have to constantly worry about tripling over my own cables. And on top of that, there is the issue of you need to set up light towers, which are the thing that scan your room to see exactly where you're at. Or if I'm doing the cheap version, when you're trying to hook up your PSVR, there are like 15 cables that plug into the headset, into your camera, into the console, and finally into your TV. So many of these pieces of tech are really interesting, but in my opinion, unfinished. Now, I know that's a strong statement, but it just comes down to the fact that there is no streamlining yet. These things feel like they just came out of the prototype testing phases. When I pick up any other gaming gadget on the market, it feels very refined. Even when it comes to something like my PSP, which is something that did sell pretty badly, as soon as I pick this up, I know that it's designed to be as sleek and efficient as possible. Each and every part of this is ergonomic. It's made to fit in my hands and be as simple as possible. That's because they've had a lot of time to get the processor small. They've had time to figure out where the buttons should be. We still don't know that for a fact when it comes to virtual reality. We're still not even really in agreement as to how our controllers should work. That's why the freaking PSVR is using PlayStation Move wands from 2004 or 2009 as controllers. Each of the different VR headsets have their own different way of trying to interact with the world. I feel like when it really comes down to it, virtual reality is going to probably see a second resurgence. In my opinion, and this might be pretty controversial to say, yes, virtual reality as of right now in 2018, it's pretty dead. The community surrounding it is pretty sparse, and there's just not enough cash flowing into the industry to get people to keep making games for it. However, I do think that it has a ton of potential on the horizon. The technology is just not here yet. These gadgets are so filled with potential, but I feel like the consumer market just isn't prepared for it yet. Once you can get a VR headset for $200 or even $100, then people are going to be on board. When you're able to play this and not have 15 different cables wrapping around your neck, people are going to be more on board. Right now, as it stands, this is a gimmick without any follow-through. While I am hoping for the day where every single game has a VR option, it's a bit off. I'm somebody who's really into racing games, especially lately, and the idea of being able to do a race in Grand Theft Auto 5 with a headset on, looking over and checking my rearview mirror and seeing where each and every one of these competitors is at on the track is amazing. That is the stuff that I truly believe is the future. But right now, we're dealing with stuff that's basically Virtual Boy 2.0. Things will change, but all progress is slow. Hopefully, in the coming ages, we see enough interest to keep this moving forward. My biggest fear is the idea that everything will dry up. The developers will leave, the people will stop, and companies like HTC and Oculus will stop investing their own funds into this development. So, we're sort of in a virtual reality arms race. Will they create the next big game before everything leaves? That, I'm not really sure. But I honestly want to know your thoughts, and this is a really complicated issue, so I do need to know your feedback. Are you somebody who has virtual reality, and what kind? Is there any game that you think is an absolute must-play, or is all of it just cool experiences that you enjoy in bite sizes? Let me know in the comments down below. And seriously, I actually am going to try and buy some of the games you talk about, because I feel like this is a discussion that needs to keep going on. Thanks so much for watching, gamers. This has been DreamcastGuy with another random gaming rant. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like, share with your friends, and subscribe if you haven't already. But do me the biggest favor of all and keep dreaming. Alright, I'm going back to the Oasis. Yeah, that's right. I'm totally quoting Ready Player One. I like that movie. Deal with it. Okay, I'm done. Oh, hi. I'm just working on the next video. If you want to see what it is, go ahead and click this button and you can subscribe. Also, if you click these video links, you can see my latest review and my latest top 10. Now I'm just going to sit here for a minute and wait for you to subscribe. Oh, I guess I could put on these giant glasses. I literally found these on a roller coaster.